Continuing along with our study of medieval Poland, after Duke Wladislaw, the ruler of Poland, died in 1102, his son Zbigniew ruled the northern half of Poland, while his half-brother Boleslaw ruled the south. But after 4 years, Boleslav attacked his brother and took his share. Zbigniew turned to Emperor Henry V for help, but in 1109, Boleslav was able to repel Henry's forces at the Battle of Głogów, which ever since has been an important symbol of Polish independence from German domination. Boleslav had Zbigniew blinded to make him unfit for the throne, though this seems to have shocked the Poles, many of whom supported Zbigniew, and Boleslav was excommunicated by his own archbishop until he publicly sought forgiveness for his actions. Like Boleslav II before him, this Boleslav turned to Hungary and Kiev for help, first to dislodge his brother from northern Poland, and then to form a united front against the Holy Roman Empire and its ally Bohemia. He became involved in the internal politics of both states, which, like others in Central Europe, suffered from frequent disputes among members of their ruling families who wanted to take the throne for themselves. Boleslav sent his soldiers to support one of these factions over the other, either because he had a marriage alliance with it, or because he thought he could leverage his support for territorial concessions. It was around this time that the first Latin account of the history of the Polish rulers was written, by one of the foreign priests who had come to live at the court. After his own sons were born, Boleslav wanted to prevent the kind of conflict that had marked his own reign by leaving a will that would instruct them to share the country after his death. Instead of a single king, there would be 5 dukes who would administer their own provinces within a united country, with the oldest, who held the capital of Krakow, in charge of its foreign relations. But after Boleslav's death in 1138, his sons wasted no time in trying to take over each other's territories, and Krakow above all. For the next 200 years, Poland did not exist as a unified state, though its people did have a shared cultural and ethnic identity, and the Polish Church continued to maintain its structure and organization. The country was reunited by Wladislaw the Short, who was a member of the dynasty which had ruled the country until the 12th century. He began in 1288 as the Duke of Krakow, the most important of the independent provinces. But he was defeated in battle and later forced into exile by the Kingdom of Bohemia. Then, beginning in 1304, he began to gain control of the Polish provinces, partly in battle and partly because the nobles who ruled them came to see him as the best way of protecting their interests. In 1319, the Pope agreed to crown Vladislav as king, but because the King of Bohemia also claimed this title, Vladislav was crowned in Krakow rather than in the traditional capital of Gniezno, and he was officially referred to as King of Krakow rather than King of Poland. But he set about creating a national system of administration and justice. Vladislav was succeeded in 1333 by his son Casimir III, who is known as the Great for his accomplishments. The first of these was to rebuild fortresses and castles across the country, which despite Vladislav's military successes had been heavily damaged shortly before his death by an invasion of the Teutonic Knights, a crusader order that had taken control of the nearby German region of Prussia. Vladislav also established the principle that the country's land, except for its private holdings, belonged to the country rather than to the king personally. In 1347, he convened a Sejm, or parliament, a practice begun by the nobles while the country was still fragmented, so that they could decide things for themselves. He also commissioned the creation of a code of laws, which took 15 years to complete, and created a standardized legal system throughout the renewed country. In 1364, Vladislav was given the honor of hosting a conference of Central European powers, which had been gathered to organize a united front against the recent expansion of the Ottoman Turkish Empire, and he took advantage of the occasion to show off the wealth of his court at Krakow. There, he also founded the university, now called Jagiellonian, one of the first in Europe. Because of his laws and decisions, he was seen as a protector of the peasants against the abuses of the nobles and the church, and he extended his personal protection to the Jews of Poland, which further increased the size of their community. Because he had no sons of his own, Casimir agreed in 1355 that if he died without heirs, Louis, the King of Hungary, who was an ally of Casimir as well as his nephew, would inherit the Polish throne from him, which is indeed what happened in 1370. Louis did not rule Poland directly. He sent his mother Elizabeth, who was Casimir's sister, to run the country in his place. Unlike Louis, she was actually Polish, and though the idea of being ruled from another country was not popular with the Poles, in practice they were largely left to themselves. Louis himself had no sons, so he arranged to have his daughters succeed him in both Hungary and Poland, and he made an agreement with the Polish nobles that in return for accepting one of them as their ruler, they would be freed from taxes and other public obligations. His youngest daughter, Jadwiga, was chosen by the nobles to succeed him in 1384, and in 1386 they had her marry Jagiellon, the ruler of Lithuania, which was an ally of Poland. This made the couple co-rulers of both countries, and Jadwiga, whose status was unprecedented, is referred to in our sources as a king, though in practice she may not have had a great deal of power. Since Lithuania was still a non-Christian country, the marriage was conditioned on Jogailon's conversion and his promise to Christianize his kingdom, which he did by converting the nobles en masse, building churches, and destroying pagan places of worship. He also changed his name to the more familiar Wladislaw. Jadwiga became known as a patron of hospitals and schools. She funded the university which had been established by Casimir the Great, and encouraged the use of Polish rather than Latin in religious services. When her sister Mary, whom Louis had made Queen of Hungary, died in 1395, Vladislav came close to invading it on behalf of his wife, who was supposed to inherit it, but the Hungarian nobles objected, and in the end Mary's husband was allowed to continue as king. Jadwiga died in 1399, shortly after giving birth, but her husband remained king for another 35 years, and the union of Poland and Lithuania continued on in one form or another until early modern times. Vladislav was also the founder of the dynasty called Jagiellonian after his birth name, which continued to rule both countries until early in the 16th century. The main challenge to this new union came from the Teutonic Knights, who had been attacking pagan Lithuania since the Crusades of the 13th century, and even though it had become officially Christian with Vladislav's marriage to Jadwiga, the Knights continued to claim the right to harass it. But now Poland joined in the fight as Lithuania's ally, and in 1410 the two countries were able to deal the Knights a serious blow. Vladislav went on to marry a Lithuanian noblewoman with whom he had two sons. He placed one in charge of Poland and the other in charge of Lithuania, though he had to convince the nobles of both countries to accept them, as the union between the two nations had granted the nobles of each one the right to approve the ruler of the other. During the 15th and 16th centuries, the nobles of both countries gained more and more power over their kingdoms. Poland was made into a constitutional monarchy with an elected king, known as the Golden Liberty, and the parliament, or Sejm, became the center of government and legislation. And though the growth of independent cities populated by merchants continued, the economy became more agricultural rather than less, and its peasant farmers more like serfs who served the powerful landowning class. The prosperity of this class, and of the country's merchants, helped to make Poland one of Europe's wealthiest nations.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel for more tutorials. Support me on Patreon so I can keep making content. And as always, feel free to email me, ProfessorDaveExplains@gmail.com.